To receive instant notification each time I upload, please hit the subscribe button and the bell notification.
Lockhart Perspective. Helping you along the way. Helping you to make it through another day. Yeah. Everything you need to know that you never knew, that you need to know. Lockhart Perspective.
Well, hello and good afternoon, everyone. Happy Wednesday. It's a good day, right? I'm so glad to have each and every one of you here joining me today. And today we're just talking about the unspoken truth. Now, I know that there's a lot of different directions we could go with that. A whole lot, right? But believe it or not, the only direction that we're going is inward. It's to the church. Now, there's a lot of stuff that goes on in the church, and a lot of times some folks have been warned. Sometimes it could be the wife of the pastor. She could have been warned. Could be the pastor. Could be some parishioners. But I'm sure that there's a lot of stories that you and I both can think about that we can put our finger on that says, hey, somebody probably told them they possibly shouldn't do that. So we're looking at the unspoken truth, focusing mostly on domestic abuse. Right? We're going to be looking at couples who have just had it out with one another. We're going to be looking at husbands who possibly should have just left it all alone and went on his way, and wives to do the same. But that's one of the things that we're talking about today. We are looking at those things that really are rarely spoken of inside the church. And I think it's important for us to look at it because this is the fruit. You know what I mean? This is the fruit of it all. Let's say hello to some folks first before we get started. And I want to say hello to our early bird, Mama Bear, Papa Bear, greetings. And everyone in the chat, hope everyone is doing well. We are so happy to see you. Hey, Steve Willis, it is so good to see you. Our executive producer is in house today. We appreciate you so much for being here. Hey, hi all you good people. Good to be able to be here. The Pioneer, it's great to see you as well. It's always good to just acknowledge one another, right? I think so. Alrighty, I see you guys loving on each other. Dan Schramm, how you doing today? It's so good to see you. I want to thank you all for all of your support. You guys are a blessing. You have no idea how much you bless me. Thank you. Sarah Brown, how are you today? It's good to see you. And Angela Courtwright Callow, how are you? Robert Ingram from across the pond. It's so good to see you. Evening, ya all. I love it. So we're going to get right into this. This is a little bit more laid back today because it's more so of, you know what, let's just talk about it. Now, some of you may or may not remember, but inside of my playlist, there is a video that's there, and it's me talking about some of the secrets that are in the church, right? And it starts out, it's I think it's called the secrets that, the black families in the church don't tell. Well, the purpose for that was, excuse me, there was so many things that as a child I went through. And then I grew up and I found out that the reason why my mom and dad were no longer around each other prior to her, passing on, they were married, but then they got a divorce. But the reason why they were no longer together was because my dad had some problems. Yeah, and it would later help me select the poor, bad guys. So because my mom had that, I must have picked that up from her. And then as you can see, some of the testimonies that I have on the channel, which again, we're very transparent. You'll see a lot of those testimonies are how I've struggled through my adult life, trying to just figure it out, trying to put my finger, right where it's supposed to be. And so when I did the playlist, the secrets that the black family does not tell, it was dealing specifically with physical, sexual abuse, marital happenings, and all that stuff. And ironically, that's the area that I am actually, being licensed and ordained and all that stuff back in the world day. And excuse me, I call the church stuff like that the world's day. I I was actually dealing with women and children, adolescents, young girls who went through some of the same things that I went through, or I'm teaching and talking to them so that they don't go through what I went through. With that said, had to tell somebody to get that timer. The timer on the biscuits, is beeping. All right. So anyway, so let's just get right into it. I'm going to go on ahead and start you out with a story that was here in Alabama. And it was not a nice story, but we're going to go on ahead and look at it. All right, so the story says that an Alabama pastor shot the wife at a church, and then he killed himself after she preached a powerful message, friends say. This happened last year, and it was Pastor Derek Scott Gandy. Derek Scott Gandy remembers how high in the spirit everyone was at the True Cornerstone Church in Mobile, Alabama on Friday night as his wife, prophetess Alicia Woodard, was done preaching. Now, we do have a video here, and I'm going to share that with you guys so we can all see it together. But I think it's really important for us to know that church violence is something that you don't have to experience. And if you're going through it, you need to stop it. We're going to help you with that. So here we go.
Alabama pastor Ulysses Woodard shot his wife and then killed himself after she preached at a women's conference. It was the second night of the 2020 Women of God Through Promise Conference at True Cornerstone Church, and prophetess Woodard, described by witnesses Mr. and Mrs. Gandy, as a woman in her 20s who recently graduated from college and brought a powerful message. Woodard preached from 2 Kings in the Bible, the story of Elisha the prophet and the Shunammite woman. The Mobile Police Department said in a statement that at approximately 11:23 p.m. on Friday night, they responded to the church on Halls Mill Road after receiving a report about a person being shot. When they got there, they saw a woman on the ground who had been shot. The suspect involved reportedly fled the scene as the police arrived. He was pursued by the authorities and subsequently returned to the church. As officers approached his vehicle, however, the suspect shot himself and then his car crashed into the church. He was pronounced dead at the scene while his wife was taken to a local hospital where she is recovering. Now, most of you may or may not know, but this is part of the reason why I no longer go to actual physical church buildings. I don't want a part of any of the garbage that's going on. But let me tell you, I truly and honestly feel like several years ago, ecclesia sort of left, and I did a story about that a while back. You guys may remember the video that I did about the funeral for the black church. I told in that story about how different things were, how people really at that time were trying to press into the word and press into God and get their lives right. Well, right now, we're dealing with so much corruption in the world that the church is simply mirroring everything that's going on. Yeah, there's no delineative line anymore. There's no difference between those people who are choosing holiness and those who decided to live their lives void of God. Absolutely none. Everyone at this point is Laodicean. Heck, I think we can all think back to a time or two where we may have made a couple of personal decisions that we know we shouldn't have done. The best part about that is that if you are connected to God in any way and you have a contrite heart, He'll make sure those corrections come quickly, especially when you're submitted. I remember, as I've stated in a few of my other videos, being a woman in church, having the ability to minister and not being able to if I told that I was a victim of physical abuse in my home. So I kept it to myself until it was absolutely too late, until the bruises began to show, and I had to share them with one of the elder pastors, a female at our church, who told me, we can't tell you to get a divorce, but we can definitely tell you by what we see that it's time for a separation. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are in a situation where you know that there is abuse, Please separate yourself. It's hard for me to believe that this woman never saw this man as having the opportunity to have violence in their marriage. As a matter of fact, this probably was not the first time, but it most certainly was his last. This is Felicia Lockhart, and this has been the Lockhart Perspective.
So as you guys can see there, my feelings are exactly the way that they were then, and that is, well, it was a while ago when I did this. You hear me still saying words and terms that I've now learned from, but the point is still the same. These situations didn't just start. Nope, they did not. Apparently, when you're going through this kind of stuff, it takes the steps. It'll start out being just a little bit, then a little bit more, then a little bit more, then a little bit more. And I think that over the past year, especially since there's been so many people that have been, locked in their homes, and different states are dealing with stuff differently, right? So because you've got different states dealing with things differently, you got some states that really are a little more restricted than others. And so you really don't know exactly what a person's full cup looks like. Now, that's not to say that, that's a reason for anybody to put their hands on someone, but I will tell you that tensions rise, and when that type of stuff happens, that's when the issues really, really take flight. Now, I want to also say this, that that it'll start just a little bit. And it's not just the women who are being abused. It's both men and women who are being abused. It's not just the women. It is men and women. But a lot of women do not think that some of the things that they do are abusive. So I want to look at that before we go on to our next story. There's the physical hit that a woman can do, and she thinks that because she's a woman, she should be able to get away with it. And then you end up with the police being called, and then the man being toted away, because if he does restrain her in any way, and maybe he's got his hands on her wrist, and he's trying to stop her or restrain her, he's going to jail. If there's anything on her when those popos get there, you can best believe he is going bye-bye. He most assuredly is. And so when you are looking at it from, a bird's eye view, a lot of people are just thinking, it's just the women that are getting hurt. But there are a lot of men who are getting hurt. Physical abuse is both ways. And I used to always, tell young women, don't follow that man from room to room. If you guys are having a conversation and there's a problem, then you need to walk away and let him walk away, but you do not need to walk room to room. We have a strong mouth. Men are brawn. Now what'll happen is he finally can't take it, or she'll put her hands on him and he will hit her back, or physically. It's just a hot mess. It is an absolute hot mess because our mouths are a little bit more, we got smart mouths. We just walk behind him and we just, crab him from room to room to room. Now, the brother done walked out the room the first time and you're going from room to room. It's not giving him a right to put his hands on you. But what I'm saying is when that cat leaves the room, let him go. Don't walk behind him and get all up in his face and what you gonna do? What you gonna do? And push him and hit. Don't do all of that ignorant stuff. Because not everybody has the same threshold. Again, it's not a reason for anybody to hit anyone, but you definitely have to understand that you can't behave a certain way and expect for a different result. Now, with that said, there's a lot of violence going on inside of churches, right? Let me show you. We're going to look at this because this goes across the board. It's not just a purple thing. It ain't a white thing. It ain't an orange thing. It's a thing. And abuse goes several different ways. So I'm going to read this and then we're going to go into the story. There was a pastor who assaulted a church member. Now, they have cameras in the church. And this cat literally attacked a church member. He kicked her, got on the ground, kicked her, stomped her. This is the type of stuff that's the unspoken truth. If it were not for cameras in the church, and if it were not for that other man, unfortunately, taking his wife's life, we possibly never would have known that there was abuse. So I'm talking about today abuse among quote unquote believers, abuse among people who are in churches. You know, most of us don't go to churches anymore. I'm not a part of any Christian organization, and you all know that for several years I was. And there's a lot of us who have been. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of us who've been a little disillusioned by some of the stuff that we saw. But now that we understand the truth in the word, we understand that that's the direction that we need to stay away from. We don't need to go back into that. But this is for those who may still be dealing with it, and for people who may be in quote unquote truth that are still dealing with it. We can all of a sudden start to learn a lot of information and then just forget about the fact that we still got these realities to deal with. So this is the Unspoken Truth, and I want you guys to go on ahead and watch this video. It is from a local news affiliate in the state in Tennessee. Yeah, it's in Tennessee. So we're going to glance at this, and I want you guys to, let me know in the chat what you think about it, because this stuff is it's rampant. This cat is literally assaulting a church member.
All right, Joyce, a Mid-South pastor pleaded guilty today to an assault caught on camera. The incident happened in February at Greater Mount Moriah Church during a celebration of long-standing local pastors. This is the video. Pastor Keith Robinson is seen exchanging words with his 68-year-old church member and then throws her up against the wall. She suffered a chipped collarbone and bruises. Pastor Dr. Kenny Brewer spoke on her behalf.
She has pins in one of her legs, 2 pins in one of her legs that she'll have to walk with a crutch for the rest of her life. Well, she's still on a walker now, going to therapy a couple of times a week.
Robinson's attorney, Mark Messler, says this was his client's first offense, and that the video does not show the woman's behavior and hostility towards his client's family in the years leading up to that moment. Robinson is on probation for 11 months and 29 days, and charges will be dropped if he has no further issues and abides by court conditions.
Wow, right? That wasn't nice. But again, I just want to say it. This stuff didn't just happen. I mean, he didn't just fall off a turnip truck one day and decide, hey, I think I'm going to beat up one of my parishioners. That doesn't happen like that. This stuff does not happen like that. I see some newcomers are here, and I just want to stop and say hello. I want to thank the pioneer for joining us today from Mr. XX Frank Nitty XX channel. Thank you for coming over. And then Frank Nitty, thank you for bringing some folks with you today. I appreciate it. Stacy, how are you? Good to see you. And then also, I thought I just saw Mr. BJ, who is really responsible for Frank Nitty and the Pioneer and a whole lot of other folks. He is one of those people who's like the Pied Piper. People follow him, and it's a good reason, because he's a good guy. Wake up. Hello, Wake Up Call Gaming. How you doing today there? It is so good to see you. It's good to see Mr. Gerald. You said, oh my gosh, that's crazy. Yes, it is. Judah Queen. Wow, you guys, you just brought everybody today, didn't you? Thank you, Frank Nitty, and thank you, Mr. BJ. Thank you for bringing everybody with you. I appreciate that. Charlie, how are you doing? Oh my goodness, there's been some stuff going on Twitter, hasn't it, Charlie? Charlie and I and a few other folks hang out together on Twitter. And there's a lot of stuff that's going on. A lot of stuff. We get busy over there. That's where we can sort of let our hair down. Yeah, that's it. So that was a very unfortunate situation. It's really bad to see that this is going on. But get this cat. Hi, Inger. How are you? It's so good to see you, sister. Good to see you. You received the alert on your phone. I am so glad to see that, Judah Queen, because, girl, not everybody getting them. Not everybody getting them. Yes, I see that. The Pioneer says, at the Lockhart Perspective, Frank brought on the entire gang up to your crib. LOL. Yes, he did, and I appreciate him for that. Yes. Now, listen, you guys. These are things that are going on and the reason why I just decided to pull out these few stories is because it sort of puts a spotlight on those of us who use the Bible those of us who believe in, who believe in a God or Yahweh Shah or however you want to say it. Because listen, we all came from somewhere. We all came from somewhere. And so my point today for us is that as we make these transitions into truth, there are certain pieces of us that we need to leave behind. We actually need to lay them down at the altar and not pick them back up again. See, we may grow in our knowledge of the word, and we may grow as it relates to things that we learn, right? But the problem is when we are still carrying on these unspoken things that are happening, the unspoken truths, the unspoken physical abuses. Now, abuse goes in so many different directions. It's not just physical. And for anyone who may be suffering from abuse in a marriage, I want you to understand that abuse goes to physical abuse. It's also psychological abuse. There is verbal abuse that is the worst because, it can go along with a lot of other stuff. It may not be a physical hit, but it could be a hit right next to your head and right in your face. It does not have to be, an abuse that is, it doesn't have to be an abuse that's kicking you or anything like that, but it can be, constantly gaslighting you. Narcissists like to gaslight. You know what I mean? And what ends up happening is they'll make you think you're crazy. There are different methods that you can use to get yourself some help. If it's not the physical abuse and you've decided that you're going to stay in the situation that you're in, you know what? My license does not allow me to tell you not to stay. What my license does allow me to tell you is this. If there is physical abuse, you definitely need to get to a place where there is no contact until you all are able to make the decision for your household and for yourself. Okay? And I'm just going to be very transparent with you on that. Again, at the top of today's show, I went in and I let you know, yes, there was a point in my marriage, my previous marriage, where the female pastor had to look at me and tell me that I was abused. And I had to then make the decision as to which direction I wanted or needed to go. Okay? And so for me, it was adding up all that I needed to see. And believe it or not, it was when my little boy, who's my youngest son, came to me after an episode with his dad, and he was very sober-minded. I think he was at the time maybe like 11 years old, 11 or 12, 11 years old. And his father had done whatever happened at that time. It was a very bad situation. But my son comes into the room and he goes, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yes, I'm fine. Just go on in there and you guys finish doing your work and finish doing this and that." He's like, "Nope, I need to talk to you." And I said, "Okay, what's going on?" He says, "Mom, you have sons. If you don't leave him, we're going to," and he told me what they were going to do. He says, "Eventually we're going to grow up and we're not going to go for that. And that's not going to be good for him. And you're going to have sons that you're not going to be able to see because we'll either be gone or we'll be put away. So you need to fix this." And that was my youngest child who told me that at that time. And so what I want to let everybody know is that physical abuse and emotional abuse do not just affect you. It affects the children. It affects everyone in the household. And again, it's not just necessarily the man that's beating up the woman, but there's a lot of verbal abuse and there's a lot of abuse, physical abuse, that women exert onto the husband. There's a lot of men who are just like, you know what, here she goes again. I have a very good example of somebody that I know that he has had a wife that would tear the house from one end of the house to the other end of the house while he and the children were secluded in a room. Yeah. While he and the children were secluded for safety's sake, they were in another room and she was destroying the home. Yep. She went from room to room, tearing up stuff, throwing things around, turning the table, a glass table. She turned the whole entire glass table upside down. She broke glass in front of the children. These children were so traumatized. Now, all of the kids now are adults, right? But if you can just see what they experienced as a child and now the issues that they have as adults, So these are the unspoken truths. These are people who call themselves, you know, believers in something. Again, I have to make it a blanket statement because I want everybody to get it. I really do. And I want everybody to get that if this is something that you're dealing with, I want you to try to seek out some help. There are several 1-800 numbers. There are several, and I will put up some in just a few seconds so that you have some type of reference that you can, go to help. Right? And again, over the last year, we've had so many people who are without jobs. Some people are losing their jobs. Some people cannot pay their bills. Some folks' mortgage is just off the chain. There are people who've not been able to do so many things that they were normally able to do. And so hear me when I say this. It doesn't matter how much of the word you've soaked in. It does not matter how much of the Bible you know. None of those things matter when somebody is going upside your head. And Yah did not call you to that. He did not. The one thing that you will notice is that if you know somebody who's going through this or has gone through this, or if it's you, the one thing you'll notice is that you've been secluded or they've been secluded. One by one, the abuser will begin to pick off the family members or the friends or relatives that could be the support system for the one who's abused, right? I don't want you going to that person. I had one man who was abusing one of my customers, and she was a customer of mine for about maybe 6 or 7 years. She would come faithfully to get her hair done, and she got this guy that she met offline. This gentleman began to pick off everyone that he could, including myself. I found it very odd when on one of her regular appointments that she generally would come alone on, that he came. He had a big satchel full of Bibles, literally. That right there turned me off because I don't like that. You walking around carrying 6 or 7 different versions of a Bible to a woman's hair appointment, and you're talking to me while she and I are having our time. I had a studio inside of my salon that allowed me the ability to be able to take care of my customers one-on-one. Well, he squeezed his tail in there. He squeezed his tail in there, and he wanted to hear everything she had to say. He wanted to hear how everything at the job was going and he wanted to hear everything she had to say. Why? So that he could pick off and see exactly how much influence, if any, I had in her life. Watchful and alert, I see you. It's so good to see you today, kind sir. Yeah, he wanted to see if I had any sway or any say or any influence on her life. He did not physically assault her. No, she didn't say that, but he did take all of her money, spend it on other women, send women flowers the same way that he groomed her offline. He began to groom other women. He would take her money and buy the other women roses and send them. She later found all types of receipts. He basically took all of her money, and when he finally left her, she was left worse than when he met her. When he met her, she had just come out of a bad marriage. She had lost about 85 pounds. Her hair was down the middle of her back, okay? Again, she came to get her hair done like every couple of weeks. So she was a regular, and we did everything we needed to get her hair together and get her. She got her finances all together. So when he met her, he met someone who had her self-esteem back, who just knew that, he wanted her. That's how she felt. Well, of course, she had worked on herself so well. I mean, you have your own natural hair down to the middle of your back, and it's thick and, healthy, and you're beautiful and you're smart and you're vivacious. She's all of that, right? She was all of that. When this man left her, he left her with an eviction. He left her with no money. He destroyed her car, and then he got her involved in some type of lawsuit that he had going with the insurance company where he had committed fraud, where the attorney and as well as the insurance company wanted nothing else to do with him, right? And he left her that way and moved to a different state because he had been working on a woman who was in the medical field in another state. He married this other woman after destroying this lady's life. This lady was abused. This lady was abused. That is abuse. He may not have ever physically assaulted her, but because assault and because domestic abuse has so many different shades to it, the unspoken truth is she was abused, okay, by a so-called pastor. That's why he had all those Bibles in this bag that threw me. All my bells started going. I was like, yo, this cat is a trip. There's no reason for this. You don't have the word inside of you. I'm thinking to myself, and everything she's saying while I'm trimming her ends, everything that she's doing, everything. He was involved in the conversation. And shortly after that, she never came back. It wasn't until a few years later when her hair began to just fall out, and he says to her, your hair was so beautiful when I first met you. You don't even take care of your hair. And she goes, no, it was 7. 7 was taking care of my hair then. And I don't go to 7 anymore. So because she stopped coming to me to get her hair done, her hair began to break off and it was really bad. So he goes, well, you need to go back and see her. Of course, she paid for it. He didn't. All right. And then I finally saw her a few years later. And he comes walking in, peeks his head in, waves, hi. And I'm like, hello. And he goes on about his business. That's abuse. That is abuse. Abuse is also waiting until you get your check and they then spend all of your check. Nothing from their check goes into the household. And this could be a male and this could be a woman. This could be somebody who thought they were going into a marriage and they decided at the beginning of the marriage that they were going to, balance out the checkbooks together and pay all the bills together, put all the money in one account. Well, later on, you find out that she has another account. Or later on, you find out that he has another account. Okay? Or you both don't share the same account at all. And now the problem is nothing is getting paid. Or you thought somebody paid something and you see that the money is messed up, right? There are a myriad of reasons as to why a couple should have their things together. Several reasons why husbands and wives should take on one another's debt, because that's a covenant. And you don't necessarily have to be married in a church. I don't necessarily believe that you need a state to tell you that you can or can't be married. Okay, I don't believe that. I believe that if a husband and a wife decide to choose one another and they've chosen not to allow the state to have a say in it, because that's the only reason why you need it. You know what I mean? That's the only reason why you would need the piece of paper is because later they got to say. Later they got a say in it. Okay, so I'm not talking necessarily to somebody who is, in a traditional piece of paper from a state marriage. All right. A husband and a wife can and this is what I believe. All right. And you correct me if I'm incorrect. But a husband and a wife can take a covenant with one another and be in that covenant. Some states have actually taken it away. All right. Some states have taken, I forgot what it's called. Somebody think, Sarah Brown, you probably know because I see what you just said here, that a license is just asking the state for permission. Absolutely so. Absolutely so. Now, as it relates to underage, of course, then I think there are some state stipulations there, right? That is apropos, and some of them are lower than you think they are. I think there's a couple of states that they were talking about the other night while I was visiting Frank Nitty's channel. I think they were talking about the age in some states as being 16, and then there are a couple of odd situations where people are 13. Some people are, it's crazy stuff, right? But my point is this. If you are in a marriage and the other person is going upside your head, step away. So this is what I'm talking about. You know what? Don't you mess with me, Joseph Francis Burton. How are you? It is good to see you. I've been thinking about you and peeking in there on your channel, trying to see what's going on. And I saw some good old stuff that you got put up there now, and I really looked at it and enjoyed it. I'm so glad to see you. Listen, I want to know what book you're working on now. I want to know what you're reading now. Tell us, because I definitely want to send everybody to your channel. He does the best reviews on books that he's reading, and he's got such a great grasp of different types of authors and whatnot. But yeah, tell us what you're doing, and it's good to see you. I'm glad that you're here. Mama Bear and Papa Bear says, then turn around and have to pay an attorney for a divorce, which then the attorney court. So do you understand what I'm saying? And like I said, I would like for y'all to correct me, but I just feel like, oh, I love you so much. It's good to see you, and I'm sorry you gotta go. Gotta break the news to Hubs. Oh, I sure will. You take care, precious. You have a good one. So yeah, but you know what? That's all the stuff that they make up. But here's the deal: is that if you decide to be with someone and you guys have declared that this is my husband, this is my wife, and you've done it, in front of family or however you've chosen to do it, that is, however you've done it, if it's based on a religious reason or based on a belief system or whatever it is, keep your hands to yourself. Keep your hands to yourself. You do not have a right to put your hands on anyone. If you're a husband and wife and you decided that you want to make sure that your money is spent a certain way, then wives, submit yourself to your husband. And husbands, love your wives as Christ, as the Messiah, loves the church. Take care of one another, right? So now we're going to get into a story that we're going to talk about, because we're dealing with abuses. We're dealing with the unspoken truth, things that happen inside of churches. If it was a license, it would have to be renewed. LOL. You know what, Dan? I'm not messing with you today. Neither am I messing with Joseph. He says, no books. I'm just doing push-ups right now, losing subscribers like crazy. Hey, you and me both, and you see mine are shrouded. I am as well. But that's okay. We just keep moving forward. Right, Joseph? So right now what we're going to do is we're going to look at a story that actually happened at a very large church. As a matter of fact, when it happened, I called the local news to see if I could not get a quote from somebody there, or maybe a link to a story that they had done on this particular congregation, so that I could then bring the information, because I couldn't find a viable source other than the sources that were on YouTube. And I didn't want to go through the whole deal of using someone else's content. I would rather have gotten it from the news. Do you know that this particular church had so much influence that no one, no ABC, CBS, NBC, none of those, MSNBC, none of them carried it that I could see. And even to today, I tried to find it and there was nothing at all. So I'm going to give you guys this. Thank you, Mama Bear, Papa Bear. I'm going to give you this information. I forgot who it was the other day, but somebody says now you're down to 5 likes. I forgot who it was, but it was a hoot. So here's the story. Here's the backdrop. So a young lady is working at a church as a volunteer. As she's working at that church as a volunteer, they have some type of altercation. Well, she ends up getting locked into a room. Right? So here's the story, and it comes out of none other than Fort Worth, Texas. Okay? So here we are. Again, remember, I tried to find the story, couldn't find the story anyplace, but apparently it was covered. So we're going to read 2 different stories, okay? All right, here we go. This is it. Potter's House, Fort Worth volunteer is cuffed and assaulted at church in a dispute over working on stage. So here's the story. A young Potter's House, Fort Worth church volunteer said that she quit her role at the church Sunday after she was handcuffed, assaulted, and physically removed from the church during a dispute with an elder that was partially captured on video about her appearing on the church's stage. In the recording of the incident, Audrey Stevens, 22, a former volunteer who attended the church, led by Patrick E. Winfield II, is heard having a discussion with the church elder identified as Rhonda Lewis backstage. Quote, "So I want to be clear on stage. You are not allowed to do anything on stage. Now, they just said to me that you said, pastor said that you could go on stage." Close quote. Now, this can be heard from Lewis is saying this on the video, telling Stevenson. Stevenson told Lewis that she spoke with the pastor's wife, who informed her that, quote, she had no regulation on me serving under any type of restriction, close quote, and they would be meeting with the elder and the other staff members to discuss the matter. The conversation soon devolved into a tense argument after Lewis indicated that Stevenson was out of order for having gone to the pastor's wife with the dispute, indicating that there would be no meeting and she is a church administrator. She further called Stevenson a manipulative liar and noted that she had been set down, meaning removed from service, and thus should not be on stage. Stevenson asserted that she has a right to call the pastor's wife and told the elder that she should be ashamed of herself. As Stevenson tried to leave the room, a church security official identified as Brandon Amy blocked her way, saying she needed to explain something to her. She was then handcuffed and restrained as she begged him to let her leave. At one point, she indicated Amy had his knee in her back while she continued screaming. When other church security officers arrived at the scene of the dispute, Amy explained that Stevenson was refusing to follow the system established by the church administrator. Quote, she's been told by her supervisor, she's a volunteer, she can't be backstage. She can't serve. She was on the stage, Amy said, explaining what led to the dispute when he asked the production manager who allowed her back on stage. And the manager said that Stevenson told him, Pastor did, close quote. I know Pastor did not say that, Amy says. He went in and searched for Stevenson backstage, and that was when the dispute occurred with the elder. Now, some may remember this and some may not. What ended up happening was they got her down and she was all over. You saw legs and it was a hot mess. Now, the purpose for me not showing it is because you don't see it anywhere in the news. It was only passed around from person to person on YouTube. Now, this story comes from the Christian Post, and this writer was Leonardo Blair. And the date of the story doesn't look like, there it is. This story was actually written 27 March 18. And again, you can't find it anywhere. Now, even though you can't find it anywhere, this exact same publication has an apology. Now, mind you, we could not find the story anywhere. Nowhere could we find the story. We looked on every news platform that we could find it. And if somebody is able to find it, well, please share it with me later and I'll make sure that we play it. But here it is. You couldn't find it, but now it appears that on the 28th in that same month, T.D. Jakes offers an apology to the volunteer that was assaulted at the Fort Worth location. There is Pastor, and here she is. Bishop T.D. Jakes, the senior pastor of Potter's House Megachurch in Dallas, Texas, offered an apology on Tuesday to a 22-year-old former female volunteer who was physically assaulted and held against her will at the church's Fort Worth campus on Sunday. The assault was captured on video, which had gone viral with over 3 million views. It stemmed from a dispute whether the volunteer, Audrey Stevenson, was allowed to be on the stage. Now, I'm not sure if they have partial of it here. Let me see if there's a partial. Nope, it's locked. You can't see it. Oh, well, they locked that. So the point is that he finally came out and he apologized. So here it is. While many of the extenuating circumstances are not shown in the video that was published March 25th, 2018, this still does not justify the lack of professionalism exhibited by the safety officer we require and expect from all of our employees. Emotions quickly escalated and a complete breakdown of communication occurred, resulting in what played out on that video, T.D. Jakes says. He continues, I'm extremely disappointed and apologize for how Ms. Stevenson was treated and ill conduct she received. Privately, we will be reaching out to Ms. Stevenson to offer her an apology that she rightfully deserves. Now, here's the deal. Here's the deal. The deal is that a lot of these folks that are in these big mega churches, small churches, or whatnot, a lot of these things are based on the way these folks act in their home. Again, our topic is the unspoken truth. This another piece of this that I find very unique is that we were able to see what happened at that smaller church, if you remember, where the pastor beat up the parishioner. Well, this is assault on the same type of level, right? You've got a minister, you've got a person who works there, and a few other people who are on the staff or quote unquote on the board of a church, right? And that small church where the man was beating the woman up, you got to find that video and it was covered. But just to show you how the unspoken truth goes in many directions, Pastor T.D. Jakes' information was not available. Not to say that it wasn't under some smaller circuits, but ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, MSNBC, none of those were allowed to talk about it. As a matter of fact, I distinctly remember calling some of the local stations there to get some information about the story. Do you know that some people said, oh, I never knew that that happened? Well, the truth is that they did know it happened. But because of the pool that he had, that story was not available and it was not being covered by anyone. So we're talking today about the unspoken truth of abuse. And it's all stemming from one place, the lack of control. The abuse that takes place husband to wives who are associated or affiliated with any Bible-believing church or organization has to end, but it will not end unless somebody speaks up. The abuse from parishioners that parishioners receive from churches, not just the physical abuse that we're highlighting today, but also the illicit sexual abuse that takes place. Whenever there's a pastor who usurps any of his power over one of his parishioners to engage with them in sexual activity, that is abuse because you are in a trusted position. Do you know that I'm not even supposed to minister to a man? Do you know that? And do you know that if I have to speak to a young man when I was in that setting, because I'm not anymore, but when I was in that setting, if I had, for whatever reason, to speak to a male, I had to have two chaperones, both one female and male. Now that may seem man-made, but it was for a specific reason. It was to keep things clear. It was to keep things well. It was to prevent you from having anything being said. Why? Because you don't want to have your good be evil spoken of. So you have to do your level best to make sure that you're not doing something that's corrupt, right? So here's what I'm saying to you. You're absolutely right, Stacy. You said it. You said it. That's the reason why I paused when I first picked that up to say that. But the deal is it could have been that he didn't want anybody to affect his, his base, his income. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? I don't know, but that's what it appears to me to be. But that story was not available. So whenever you're having any abuse or anything that's coming from a spirit of manipulation from a pastor or anyone in leadership at a church, that is not from the Father. OMG, yes, Rachel, the Hillsong Megachurch, and that is a mess. That is a total mess. I'm not sure if anybody else knows about that. But I think it was because the dad did something and the son knew about it. And then, it was just a mess. It was just a mess. You know what I mean? It was just a mess. Also, some people are excellent at filtering and know how to seduce the opposite sex with the most innocent sounding words. Exactly. And a lot of people are not, a lot of people are, how they say back in the day, up on game. If folks are not up on game, then they don't know that somebody is running game on them. They don't know because their flattery is a dangerous thing. I watch it. I watch it. You're doing too much flattering. There's too much going on. Yeah. So I watch it. But a lot of people are not like that. And it doesn't mean that you can't get got if you know how to watch it. It means that that person was really slick. And a lot of times people want to hear that flattery. That flattering tongue, like, oh, Miss such and such, you look so beautiful today, sister thus and such. Oh, gee, I really like those shoes, sister thus and such. Really? Really? I had a fella when I was ministering at Crenshaw Christian Center back several years ago. Um, we had just recorded their Christmas CD, and the female lead on that whole CD was me. Well, apparently I had an admirer, and I didn't know anything about it. It was a night where we had Babby Mason come and minister at the church, and it was like some big event that we were doing there. So it was Babby Mason, it was Helen Baylor, it was a whole bunch of folks, and I was backstage because we were obviously going to, minister or perform some of the songs that we had done. Well, one of these men, a man, was getting food in the green room, and we were all in the green room, and he saw me. I was making a plate for one of my children, and he goes, "OMG, it's you." He said, "Oh my gosh," but I'm just saying OMG. Oh my God, it's you. And I said, "I'm sorry." He goes, "It's you. You. I've been trying to figure out how to meet you." And I said, "Oh, okay." He goes, "Your voice, and you're so this, and you're so beautiful, and you're blah, 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 acca, wacka." Just a bunch of garbage came dribbling out of his mouth. And he goes, "But I got a question for you. Are you married?" And I said, "Yes, sir, I'm very married." And so I moved along. And so he got around the other side of the table to put more food on his plate. And he goes, "Hey, sister," he turned his head to both sides, and he goes, "Are you happy? Are you happily married?" I said, "I'm most assuredly happily married," as loud as I could, but as respectful as I could without people looking at me like I was crazy. About a year later, they found out that this man was involved with another person's wife at the church. Those exact same words of flattery that he attempted to use on me obviously worked on somebody else, and now they had to minister to her because she had gotten herself involved in some garbage with this cat. So he lost his position. She had lost her husband. The whole entire family was ruined. And it's all because of that flattery. Well, he was in a position at the church. He was at the church in a position. It doesn't matter which position that you're at the church. Doesn't matter if you're the deacon. Doesn't matter if you're a drummer. Doesn't matter if you're the bass player. It doesn't matter if you clean in the toilets. If you're a part of that church, you are a member of that church. And you should be held at a certain level of, you should have some ethics about you. Period. He didn't. So my point is, that's exactly what I mean. Oh, you got a chance to visit that place 20 years ago. Yeah, my former pastor, since I was a little girl, went there. I was there with my former pastor, and he passed away, as you may know. Yeah, I wanted to do that story too, but I just thought dealing with the Hillsong story would be a bit much. We had an issue like that at that church too, and there was something that was very publicly known. Yes, I did. I ministered at CCC. Yes, sir, I did. Yep, the late great Dr. Price. If you can ever get your hands on their Christmas CD, and it would be the one if they've done another one, I don't know, but it would be the very first one that they ever did. All the female leads you hear there is me. So yeah, that's me. I sure did. So listen, folks, we're coming up on 52 minutes and 36 seconds. And I want to thank you guys for allowing me to talk about the unspoken truth with you. If there's something that has been, said to you today that will lead you to just, maybe go into a trusted family member to talk to, yes, she is. Yes, she's still very much alive. Yes, Dr. Betty Price, who is still alive and very smart woman and minister still. Yes, she does. She's actually responsible for, as far as in the world, because I consider that type of church setting now the world, believe it or not. But as far as churches, she was one of the reasons, she's one of the people who actually set my honorarium at a certain level. Yeah, she actually did. She was the one who anyway, she set it at a certain level. So no matter where I flew, whether I was out of the country or whether I was in the United States, because of where she set my my honorarium level, that was my level, the least that my honorarium would be when they would do those kinds of things, right? I don't require that now. So if anybody has someplace you want me to come and minister or speak or any of that stuff, let me know, because there's no honorarium. You can give me a biscuit and whatever the Lord puts on your heart. And I did say the Lord, because that's how I meant it, the old school way. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, so it doesn't matter. Whatever you got on your heart to give, it can be a bus pass and, and a biscuit. It wouldn't matter to me because it's not about that. Then yeah, that's how we thought. But now, no. Whatever you have to give, you want to bless. Thank you. I receive it graciously. The Father breathes on it and stretches it, and it meets all the needs. So thank you. But anyway, you guys, I want to thank y'all for being with me for the last 54 minutes. You guys are awesome. I'm glad that we were able to touch base on this. And I just wanted to let you guys know that abuse is never accepted. Abuse financially is never accepted. Don't you women be getting in those men's faces, running them around from room to room. Men, if you are beating up on the woman, you need to back it up and back it up quick. Let her alone. If you got a problem and you know you do, you need to go see somebody. Okay? You need to go see somebody. Pastors, are you out here, men, supposedly men of God? Men of God. Are you abusing children in the church? Are you abusing women? Are you abusing other men's wives like Polk was there in the state of Georgia, in Atlanta? Polk was, rest his soul. Yeah, he was doing that, sleeping with all kinds of folks. Okay? All right? All kinds of people. All right. Yes, he was. He was messing with his brother's wife. He was messing with a man's wife in the church. Are you doing that? Knock it off. What we've been talking about over the past few days is dealing specifically with those who claim to be believers. That's what we've been dealing with. Crying loud and sparing not. That's what we've been talking about. But all of that is always directed to the persons that know Yah in one way or another. And again, there's so many different people waking up now. There's so many folks still saying God versus Yah, saying, Jesus versus Yahweh Shah, and so y'all know what I'm talking about. Okay. Again, thank you so very much for being with us, you guys. We're coming up on 1 hour. I want to thank everybody for being here who has not been here before. Welcome. Amy Duran, I see you in the house. Don't let me leave here without saying hi and hugging your neck. Sarah Brown, I see you too. You guys are all the best. You all take care of one another. And remember what we always say here on this channel, that man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of the Most High Yah. You guys take care of yourselves and take care of one another. Until we see each other again, continue to be blessed. To receive instant notification each time I upload, please hit the subscribe button and the bell notification.
Lockhart Perspective. Helping you along the way. Helping you to make it through another day.